Good afternoon. This is Joseph Sharp with Lead Tech Service. It is Saturday, May 26th at 12:30 p.m. We have a iPhone 6s Plus on the table with Type 2 searching no service. This is not Qualcomm. This is where we have a IMEI showing up after we do ##06 £, and we have Qualcomm does have IMEI firmware. So what we're going to see is that the power module, or the RF transmitter, has burnt out. We have good voltage going to and from this WTR 3925 chip. This is a common chip from the 6S into the 7. It is typically a good chip, and we don't see these go out too often. We've looked for other burn places on these boards and can't find any. So we're going to go ahead and remove this chip from our donor phone. That's what you're seeing under the microscope now. We're going to remove that, reball it, and then remove the chip from our customer phone and apply the new one to it. This whole process should take about 30 minutes, and we'll be billing about $80 for that service. The searching for the problem is typically going to run about $100 or another $40 for diagnostics. So in all today, they'll be looking at about $120 for this service. We see these fairly common. Usually Type 1 is more common. That's where the 6 and 6 Plus will come apart at the top of the Qualcomm chip. So with the 6 Plus, what we typically see is that this big UBB-RF chip is going to come apart at the top left corner, and we typically have to run jumpers for that. They have made some modifications with the 6S, including that stronger frame, that prevent us from having to do that any longer. We don't typically see a lot of issues with the 6S searching no service, and so this is probably going to be a common one. But let's get started. Okay. So currently this board is directly on my blue mat. My customer board is chalked up in a board holder. The tape is removed from the bottom, so we can check those voltages there. What we're going to do is my hot air machine is at about 350 for chip removal, and at about 50% on the airflow. Let me switch back to my correct schematics. So this is a radio transceiver. It actually has 5 different functions on the radio frequency side, so if we have an issue with this, we have a huge issue. Alright, so I'm going to apply a liberal amount of flux. I have a couple quarters on the board. I don't typically do this, but where this is located, there are some chips at the bottom, including Qualcomm, that we don't want to pop, putting heat to the side of the board. I also don't have a board holder, so this is going to help to heat sink this board and keep that 350 degrees from cooking it. Alright, so I have some liberal flux on here. I come in from pretty far attitude. And start to boil this flux. When we see it boil, I'm going to take some heat off of it. See, we're seeing little bubbles escape. At this point, I'm going to take heat off of it, and that should help to suck the flux back up under the chip. This chip is right up against another transceiver, and so we don't want to move that guy. Alright. This one does have a lot of grounding pads underneath it, so it's going to take a second to heat. One thing with these blue mats is if you put heat directly to them, they will boil, and they will get a big blister there in the middle of them and lift your board up off of your desk. That's not always the best. Okay, just like that, we're going to lift that chip off. I don't see any pulled pads. There are a couple cold solder joints, which could have been the problem with this guy in the first place. And this is our good chip, so I'm going to set it aside because we'll be reballing that here in a second. So this is a known good working board. Everything on this should be exactly how it should be. Alright. I'm going to set this board off to the side with these extraordinarily hot quarters on it. In just a moment while I readjust here. Some haze on my microscope, so I'd like to get that taken care of. Let's go. See how that works. Now that we know how much heat that requires to remove, I am going to replace these quarters. Hey, how's it going?
nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a minimum
Alright, sorry about that. We had a walk-in customer. Alright, so this is our customer board. There you go ahead and again add some liberal flux. One thing I do need to do is test the points on under here in diode mode and make sure that everything is appropriate, and to confirm that it is in fact a chip that is damaged, not a pulled pad or another piece of equipment in here that's gone out. So again, we're still at 350 degrees. Flux is starting to boil. I'm going to remove heat and then go back in. And that just allows that flux to get all the way under that board. Not as clean as the first one. Okay, so let's see. So if you are using quarters, you want to leave them on there. Or any kind of coinage, you want to leave those heat sinks in place until they are cool. You don't want to remove those heat sinks with this board still molten. You could find yourself kind of in a spot where you have a lot of heat trapped in the board, and you're not allowing it to escape into those heat sinks. Come in here with a loaded soldering iron just to clean up some of these pads. flux. We want to go ahead and prep this for reassembly while we have it warm. If we're using an out-of-the-box chip, which we can, then you want this board to be pretty hot. You can see by the amount of solder I have left over, this board is a tad too cold. So again, the heat is still at about 350. I come in here and make sure that this is an appropriate temperature. I would like to thank a channel called Rebel for posting an hour of free copyright music. In my last stream I was having some issue finding good quality audio to listen to without getting banned from Twitch. So, thanks again. Their channel is called Rebel on YouTube. Looking good, everything on there is nice and uniform now. I keep my soldering iron at about 427. And we just want to make sure everything is nice and solid on there. Before we do circuit testing, I do like to clean the board and then make sure that there's no flux in between my probes and the board. As always, just a little bit of isopropyl alcohol on a toothbrush. This method works best for me. If you have an ultrasonic on hand, you could run it through that at this point as well. I do find that to be time consuming, and I would like to just get this job done. There will be several instances where you need to clean this board, and running through the ultrasonic is a good way to turn a 30-minute job into an hour-and-a-half job. When everything's done, I do recommend running this board through an ultrasonic though. That's going to clean these pads up. That's going to get any kind of debris or corrosion left on here out, and remove any leftover flux. That flux, if you do leave it on the board, will tend to eat into the motherboard, and you'll have failures over time just because of the acidity of that. Right. I'm just going to go through and multimeter these points and keep red on the frame here. Checking for any points that are not grounded or non-connect points. ZXW, anything that's red should be grounded. Anything that's not red should not be grounded. So if we find anything that is, we're in trouble. We have a ground point here. That's appropriate. That one is. That one is. The thought process behind replacing this chip is that we have everything that says Qualcomm is online. Our main Qualcomm CPU is running perfectly okay, but we just don't have any service. All this phone says is no service when you put in a SIM card, or no SIM. It also has the feature that it takes a few times to register the SIM when you have it in there, or that's at least what the customer described to us. In our experience, we were able to get to that perfectly fine. There are a few grounded out pads here. That one is supposed to be grounded. So number 16, 16, 8. Both of these are completely grounded out. So 16 and 8 are grounded out. We're not sure if they should be. CXW says they should not be. But they have no resistance to ground. And this one is a non-connect. So that's ground, not ground, ground, no, ground, no, ground, non-connect, not ground. So this is a kind of tedious process. Some of my customers asked why we charge a diagnostic fee, specifically for this process. We have to go ahead and remove chips. This is utterly time consuming. And once these are tested, then we need to run further down the schematic and find out why those are in fact the way they are. So I'm going to flip back over to Adobe where I have the schematics open. So on here we're looking for some of the pins for this radio transceiver. Transceiver power, this is going to be one of the first instances where we see this guy. PRX ports, transceiver PRX ports, we also show up on. And DRX GPS ports, this transceiver also shows up on. And TX ports. The pins in question were 8 and 16, and these are numbered appropriately. These are not line numbers, these are actually pin numbers, but they are not laid out in rows. So 8 and 16 are both talking to FLF, BR, RF, say that 5 times fast. And they go through an 0805 component, which could be failing to ground, or it's supposed to be grounded out. One thing I would like to do is test my assumed or known good board. This board hasn't had too much done to it. It still has all of its shielding. We've removed a couple backlight components, but everything else on this board should be like new. The majority of my boards are iCloud locked, which not much you can do with these besides strip them down for parts. So 8 and 16 were the ones that we want to test. Focus my microscope so I don't go cross-eyed. Okay. And both of those are shorted out. So those are fine. It's just an issue with ZXW saying that they aren't to ground, but we know in fact they are using a known good working board. So from there we can continue on. We will use some 3D shielding. These are from Mobile Centrics for the A8 and A10 processors. These have been really critical in our success here. These work very, very well because they have pockets in them, and they allow the boards to, or the ICs to sit flush in there. It doesn't appear that we have a frame that registers with these. The layout of this is diagonal. This one seems to fit okay, but not perfectly. Any of these work diagonal. That one seems to fit. Alright. I'm using the 1801 frame diagonally. That seems to work okay. It is the same spacing. I'm able to see all of the solder points fairly clearly. I'll boil some of this flux away. So that didn't work the way I wanted it to. This frame is going to work though, as soon as we are the right size. And clean the burnt flux off of this frame. And we're going to do it the right way instead of trying to be fast about it. One of the hardest parts about this job is sourcing or reballing ICs. Some of these ICs we can't buy, and so we have to refurbish them. In this case, Microsoldering Supply does not carry this one. Nor do I want to make a customer wait 3 days for a cellular repair. So we're just going to go ahead and reball this one. If it doesn't work, worst case scenario, we still just have to order it. Okay. So that clean, what we want to do is kept on tape this IC to the frame. Made some poor man's Kapton tape. Or some poor man's double-sided tape, I should say. Just folded that one over to make a double-sided adhesive for this guy. So this is Chip Quick. T3 size solder paste. When this is heated to about 200 degrees, it's going to turn into a metal. We're going to apply a liberal coating above that. To keep the solder paste from boiling off, I just use a piece of glass. This is from a iPhone. From a old glass only repair. We're just going to place that over. The heat will go right through this and shouldn't cause any problem. I'm going to lower the heat on this to about 280. That's going to give us plenty of overhead to work with. So we're going to go in. Seeing it boil, everything's nice and even. There we go. And just let it cool. Go. Okay. Well, that's done. We're gonna liberally clean this. Inspect everything. And at this point, if we need to add more solder paste we can without adjusting this frame again. Okay, everything looks appropriate here. We're gently going to evict this IC from its home. There we go. We have a ton of leftover solder paste. Okay. Just looking for anybody who isn't full, anybody who's out of spec, any two that are touching, and everything looks okay. We're looking for nice full half domes here. We want a complete hemisphere. That looks like a nice clean reball. Alright. So I loaded this board with a little bit of flux that's going to allow us to to have some wiggle room when we're putting this guy back on. So we can give a nice clean joint on here. No need to check ZXW for registration, because this is a pretty unique layout of their solder balls underneath. If we do look at ZXW, we can see that pin 1 is here, and that corresponds with the dot that's on here. It's going to be towards this corner, and that's where pin 1 should also be.
Why some say the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain?
So I'm going to put my heat back up to 350, pressure down to 30.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize
Take a swig of ginger ale.
of our energies and skills.
And we're going to heat this guy up.
One that we're willing to accept, one we are willing to control, and one we intend to win.
I like to start from hella far away. This chip has nothing to go on, and so there's no reason for it not to just walk away on you. Let's set crossways for a little while. Not sure if that's going to hurt anything. You want to make sure that nothing coming out of this thing is shorted out. It's potentially one of our biggest problems. Which one? Oh yeah, it's all set.
Okay. You said it's all set.
It's on the shelf. Just throw the battery and stuff back in it. Yeah, I just took the battery and the back plate off of it. There's no screws taken out. I didn't test that. I cleaned it out. I used Alright. Alright, so we have this chip back on here. Hasn't shorted anything out, it doesn't appear to. So we are going to reassemble and test. I've cleaned this with some isopropyl alcohol. Got off a lot of the macro debris from this repair here. We'll then run it through an ultrasonic cleaner and get it cleaned up the rest of the way, and reassemble it for final testing. But at this point, it looks like it is a complete job, and we should be good to go on it. Again, we're doing this job. This is a Tier 2 searching no service. Tier 1 is simply Qualcomm. That would be no modem phone firmware. When you do *#06*#, you shouldn't have anything come up on the screen. It usually just closes back out on you. With this one, all of that stuff was present. It just said no service at the top. So at this point, it looks like it's a completed successfully repair. We will reassemble test just to confirm that, and then deliver it off to the customer. If you would like any repairs from Lead Tech Service, just feel free to reach out to us at info@leadtechservice.com, or to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube. Again, this is Joseph Sharp signing off.